Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress. After the Candidates Tournament, which was held in Berlin in Germany, the center of the chess world, stayed in Germany for the Grenke Classic with Carlsen and Caruana and other top players, but also the Grenke Chess Open, and that tournament was won by another prodigy. Yes, another prodigy I need to tell you about. His name is Vincent Keymer and he is German himself. He's a 13-year-old international master and he won the Grenke Open 2018. Here are the final results. You see international master Vincent Keymer on top with 8 points out of 9 games, 7 wins and 2 draws, ahead of a whole army of very strong Grandmasters. Vincent Keymer was born on November 15, 2004 in Mainz in Germany. His father is a concert pianist and his mother plays cello in an orchestra. He learned chess at the age of 5 and obtained his final international master norm in July 2017. His current coach is former World Championship challenger Peter Leko, who played for the world title against Vladimir Kramnik in 2004. Keymer's win in the last round against Richard Rapport has been covered by many chess channels on YouTube, so I will take another game. In the penultimate round, in round 8 on the 2nd of April 2018, Keymer was white against the Hungarian Grandmaster Gábor Papp. Keymer has a rating of 2403 and Papp has a rating of 2604, so 200 points in a difference. Let's look at that game. One more nice fact about Keymer is that when he scored an international master norm at the age of 10 years and 3 months old, he was the youngest to do so at that time. And he was called a truly extraordinary talent. By whom? Well, by Garry Kasparov. Keymer said afterwards that before this game he had been very nervous. During the night and the following morning I was nervous, but once I got to the board, that was all gone. Let's look at what happened. Keymer played d4 and d6 from his opponent. Knight f3, knight f6, c4, g6, g3, bishop g7, bishop g2, black castled, knight c3, knight bd7 and bishop f4. We are in a King's Indian, the fianchetto variation, with g3 and bishop g2. e5 was played and that sacrifices a pawn. In an earlier game that Keymer played in 2017, c6 was played instead. But Gábor Papp plays aggressively. Of course, with 200 points extra, he wants to win this game with black and he sacrifices a pawn with e5. Keymer took it, d takes, knight takes, and knight h5. Keymer decides to retreat with the knight, knight e3, protecting the bishop with the knight, knight takes f4, knight takes f4, and c6. Keymer castled, queen b6, attacking the pawn on b2, knight d3, defending that pawn, knight e5, c5 kicking the queen, queen a5, b4 kicking the queen again, and queen a3. Now Keymer has to be careful, there is a threat. The threat is knight takes d3, let's have a look. Of course the obvious threat is to take that knight that is unprotected, but if you defend it with, for example, queen c2, then there is knight takes d3. And if you take back, then suddenly that knight on c3 is attacked twice, and you're going to lose that knight. And black wins. So that is the threat after queen a3, you have to be careful. And Keymer saw that and played queen c1. Knight c4 from Papp and knight e4 on the way to the very nice juicy d6 square. But by playing that move, Keymer lets his rook be en prise on a1. Papp didn't take it. What happens if you take it? Well, that's good for white. Bishop takes a1, queen takes, and then let's look at one variation. I'll just give the first line from the engine. Black has won an exchange, but let's have a look. Rook d8 is a normal move, but then the black king gets into trouble. Knight f6 check, and king f8 is the best move. Knight takes h7 check, king g8, knight back to f6 with check. You don't really want to go to one of these squares, then you're in the line of the queen. So king f8 again, and then b5 is the main computer move, intending to give this bishop more scope on the long diagonal. So that is after knight e4 and then taking the rook on a1. An exchange sacrifice, very nice move, knight e4. But that's not good, as we just saw, so black decided to play bishop e6, bringing that bishop into play. Now Keymer decided to swap the queens, knight takes back, and rook a c1, taking the rook out of the attack of the bishop on g7. Here you can take the pawn on a2, but it's not good, because then the rook returns to a1. And if you then take the exchange, the other rook takes back, and you're going to win one of the pieces on the a file. You cannot save both pieces at the same time. With a better position for white, he gets 2 pieces for a rook. So after rook ac1, Pap did not take on a2, he played knight b5. Knight d6, nice square there. And here the best move is just to take off that knight, and after c takes d6 play rook a d8, and white is slightly better, but this is okay for black. But Pap wanted to win this game against an opponent with 200 rating points less, and he tries to complicate its position. He played knight c3. He's now threatening to take on a2, and he's threatening to take on e2 with a nice fork. Rook c2 deals with both threats. Rook a b8. You have to defend that pawn on b7. And knight f4. Hitting the bishop. Pap does not want to part with his bishop pair, and he plays bishop d7. Rook fc1. Now the knight is under attack by both rooks. So again, white is threatening to win 2 pieces for a rook. So knight a4 from Pap. Rook d1. a6. Rook d3. Rook fd8. And now a very nice combination found by young 13-year-old Vincent Keymer. Knight takes b7 is a beautiful shot. Probably not very difficult for a player of Keymer's strength, but it's a very pretty combination and it's very strong. Pap had obviously missed it. Rook takes b7, there's really no choice, and then bishop takes c6, beautiful move. Attacking the rook, attacking the knight if this bishop moves, and the bishop is pinned because the rook on d8 is unprotected. There's really no choice, bishop takes c6 has to be played, and then rook takes d8 check. So the smoke has cleared, and if we count material now, then we see that white has a rook and 3 pawns for the 2 bishops, and has a winning position. Is check, so bishop f8 had to be played. Rook c8, hitting the bishop. Bishop d7, hitting the rook. And rook a8. And now the threat is c6 with a fork, protected by the rook. So rook takes b4 was played by Pap. c6 anyway. Black gave a check. King g2. And bishop f5 saving the bishop. Now you would say that this position is screaming for c6 to c7, trying to promote that pawn, but it's too hasty and Keymer did not play it. Let's have a look why this is not that strong. Knight b6 is then the move for black, protecting the c8 square and hitting both rooks. Here white can promote the pawn, but then knight takes, rook takes, bishop takes, rook takes, and rook b2, and white has an extra pawn, but black has good drawing chances here. Let's look at one other variation after c7, then knight b6, and we just looked at c8 queen, but better is rook takes a6 instead. And again, let's look at the main variation, the main line from the computer. Black takes the rook, white takes the knight, and now it looks very good. What can you do against promotion? If you take that rook, then white will promote to a queen, but you still have a way out for black. You can play rook c1, very nice move. I had to show you this variation, because if white then promotes to a queen, then there is bishop e4 check, with a discovered attack on the newborn queen. f3, rook takes, and f takes e4, and now white has two extra pawns and good winning chances. But back to the game, bishop f5 was played, hitting the rook on c2. Keymer did not play c7, he found a better move. He played knight d3, very strong move. He found the best move in the position, covering the attack from the bishop on the rook, and this is a better move than c7. Knight b6, hitting the other rook, rook b8, and rook b5. The rook is protected there by the pawn so that the knight can play. But Keymer had looked further. He saw a4. If he had played c7 instead, then there is knight c8. Still good for white, but a4 is stronger. Hitting the rook. Rook b3 is not an option for black, as now the knight is pinned, and a5 wins more material. So after a4, Pap decided to take that pawn with the knight, but now that knight is deflected, and c7 now is stronger. Knight hurries back to b6, but then Keymer played rook c5. If you take the rook, then the knight takes back, and now this knight has to play, after which white can promote, winning more material. So after rook c5, Pap played rook b3, but now a very nice move. Another very nice move from Keymer. Rook takes f5. That rook was taken. Keymer has sacrificed an exchange, but of course now the c8 square is weakened. That bishop was protecting the c8 square, and that bishop is now gone. So Keymer promoted. You have to take the new queen, and you are of course not going to take back on c8. You're going to take on b3. Take the rook. Rook takes b3, and if we count the pieces now, after the smoke is cleared up, then we see that white is a full exchange up. Here Pap could have resigned, but he played on. Why not? King g7, rook b8 hitting the knight, knight d6, rook a8 hitting the pawn, knight b5, and there goes another pawn, knight d4, hitting the pawn on e2, knight f4 protecting that pawn, h6, e3 kicking the knight, knight went to b5, and now white's knight comes into action. This is quite instructive how Keymer finishes off this position. Knight h5 check, king h7, and knight f6 check. King back, and knight e8 check, covering the d6 square, and we'll see in a minute why that is useful. King g8, and the last move of the game, rook a5, hitting the knight, and if the knight moves, that f-pawn will get lost, and this knight cannot go to d6 to protect the pawn, because that square is covered by white's knight. So white is going to win yet another pawn, and black had enough. Gabor Pap had enough and resigned, and Vincent Keymer was now on 7 points out of 8 games. The last round was played on the same day, double round on the last day, and as I mentioned before, Keymer also won that game against Richard Rapport and won the tournament, and with that €15,000 and a Grandmaster norm. We will surely hear a lot more about young Vincent Keymer in years to come, and I will keep an eye on him and tell you when something happens. For example, when he becomes a Grandmaster, that will be a big moment for him. I have more books to give away. This book is up for grabs, The Hyper Accelerated Dragon by Raja Panchvani. If you want to win that book, it's very easy. Just put in a comment underneath this video and then you will be automatically in the draw to win this chess book. I will announce the winner in my next video. The books are made available by Chess the Mind Game Shop, my sponsor, and the link to the Mind Game Shop is in the description box. It would be great if you could click on it, and even better if you could order something from them. It is a web shop of chess books. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel. Please leave a comment, I will read them all and I will reply to them all. You also may want to check out my Chess to Progress channel. The link is in the description box. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.